Well, there you have it. Fox News Sunday's Chris Wallace versus Russian President Vladimir Putin. You can tell Putin is used to having his way in interviews. Fortunately, Chris Wallace pushed back. And with me now, with reaction to the interview and the summit, it's the former president of Georgia, Mikheil Saakashvili. Russia invaded Georgia back in 2008 while you were president, sir. So how did you feel watching that interview?
Well, it's very much déjà vu for me. I met Vladimir Putin more than 30 times, and he not only invaded my country, but he heavily intruded into my country's national elections, sent GRU operatives, planted fake news and fake information, spread it there. In the GRU people even penetrated our penitentiary system to stage fake videos there, and then they went viral on the Facebook, on internet. And so actually they used all the same tricks that they are using elsewhere. And for me, there is no need. But watching Vladimir Putin, I mean, it's Putin, well, at his worst, which is Putin that basically lies without blinking, but you can tell very well that he's lying, because on the one hand, look, he says, oh, I don't really know anything about these things. And then he reveals very detailed knowledge of everything. He says, well, you know, this was legitimate, you know, Democratic Party was doing that, so what's wrong with, he basically wants American public to thank him for that. And then I also see when he says, look, people in Syria should be blamed for the fact that they were destroyed. I remember once I asked him, looking into his eyes, and say why Russian secret services were kidnapping people from Georgian territory, and he looked at me and said, look, we are not kidnapping them, they are kidnapping their own selves. And that somehow reminded me of what he said of the
and he was kind of doing the same thing with the Novichok case, which is the Russian nerve
he said
agent.
He does. I don't know anything about Skripal. This is I remember exactly. I was sitting next to him at a CIS dinner when it was a Litvinenko case, when he was explaining at length that he doesn't care about Litvinenko. He never heard about Litvinenko. He would not. Why would he do anything about Litvinenko? And then what I realized, that he knew every detail about that guy that was killed in England. And later, of course, English investigation clearly showed that it was directly the Russians. And nothing of this sort can take place without Putin's express knowledge.
All right, so it's obvious that no one is ever going to force him to admit what the Russian state does and some of the murderous acts that they undertake, possibly at his direction. But you do say that Putin is vulnerable. How is President Trump best equipped to take advantage of that vulnerability?
Well, first of all, yes, going back, it's so ridiculous when he says, well, we don't have enough resources to survey on people. The only resources they really have enough, that's resources to spy on people. But otherwise, Russia is out of resources. Look, their economy is of the size of South Korea. They're smaller than New York State economy. When they say, well, Russia is too big to be sanctioned, it's not true. Russia is very vulnerable to the U.S. sanctions. And I have to say, to the credit of Trump administration, that after congressional mandate, they went beyond the formal congressional mandate, and they went after Russian oligarchs, and that really hurt Putin. And I think the president didn't give in on that one, and that's very important, that sanctions are staying in place. The other thing is when they say, look, on Crimea, he himself admitted that President Trump didn't give up any of the grounds. That's what Putin was counting on. I hope that he also spoke about Georgia, because my country's 20% of my country's territory is occupied by Russian troops, and actually they've signed the agreement that they had to withdraw, but they couldn't care less about
President
the agreement.
Saakashvili, we have run out of time, but I really thank you for your expertise. Hopefully we can discuss this again in the future.